The Galactic Empire stretched across 1,000 star systems, a colossus of iron and ambition. Its fleets dominated the void, its armies crushed rebellions before they could begin, and its leaders sat in palatial spires that pierced the very clouds of their home worlds. They believed themselves eternal, a force that could never be challenged or undone. Their ships moved like shadows through the stars, their flags burning bright in the darkness. The High Command boasted of progress and conquest. Worlds bent the knee in swift submission, their cultures rewritten in the Empire's image. From the highest bureaucrat to the lowliest soldier, each lived in the certainty that the Empire's reach was infinite. None dared question the inevitable triumph of their cause. But in the whispers of forgotten quarters, a name stirred unease. Baba Yaga. To the average citizen, Baba Yaga was nothing but a myth, a relic of ancient earth folklore spoken in hushed tones by old storytellers. They spoke of a witch, a crone who dwelled in a hut that stood on chicken legs, a figure both feared and respected, a being who could command forces beyond mortal understanding. The Empire's scholars dismissed it as superstition, an artifact of primitive times unworthy of serious consideration. Yet, in the outer colonies, in fringe settlements far from the Empire's gleaming capitals, the legend held a different weight. Among miners, traders, and forgotten tribes, the name Baba Yaga carried a warning. They said that when the Baba Yaga cried, it meant the end was near, not just of individuals, but of empires, of worlds, of time itself. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. The deep space listening stations picked up strange signals from the void, waves of sound and energy that defied explanation. The signals were mournful, a wailing carried across the stars, like a woman's cry stretched across light years. Initially, they were written off as cosmic interference, the whispers of dying stars, or the trick of tangled quantum fields. But the signals grew more distinct, more deliberate. Scientists stationed at outposts debated their origins. Some argued it was natural, a glitch in communication. Others, quieter and more cautious, suspected something ancient and deliberate. One by one, attempts to decipher the transmissions failed. The sound seemed to reach out to the mind, stirring something deep, a memory no one could place. In the halls of power, the Empire's ruling council was brief. Most dismissed the phenomenon, branding it a harmless curiosity. Yet some voices warned against ignoring the warnings. Myths have a way of shaping reality, one advisor said grimly. To dismiss them is to blind ourselves to danger. As the months passed, incidents began to multiply at the edges of the Empire. Supply ships disappeared without a trace. Communications in remote sectors fizzled into static. Entire colonies reported strange sightings, a tall figure cloaked in shadows, appearing briefly at the edge of vision, always vanishing when approached. Survivors spoke of cold that pierced bones and a sadness that clung to the air. Despite growing reports, the Empire sought to suppress the stories. Public broadcasts labeled the incidents as sabotage or enemy propaganda. The ruling class doubled down on military campaigns, unwilling to appear weak or vulnerable. Humans who lived under the Empire's iron rule found themselves caught between disbelief and fear. Many clung to their daily lives, trying to ignore the growing unrest. But in secret, some turned to the old stories, whispering prayers to Baba Yaga as if she were a guardian. These were scattered pockets of hope in a galaxy ruled by fear. The Empire's arrogance was vast, yet it was beginning to crack. The more they tried to silence the unknown, the louder the echoes of Baba Yaga's cry became. It seeped into dreams and radios alike, an unrelenting reminder that something beyond their understanding was awakening. At a remote command station orbiting a dying star, the highest-ranking officer of the Empire's fleet stared at the wavering readings. The crying had grown closer, more defined, a sorrowful lament that chilled even his hardened soul. He was a man who had faced countless battles and bloodied victories, yet he felt an unfamiliar dread take root within him. He ordered scans, but no enemy fleet appeared. No weapon was pointed at them. Still, the crying persisted, and with it, a terrible certainty. This was no natural phenomenon. This was a warning. The Baba Yaga was crying, and that meant the end had arrived for the Galactic Empire. This truth spread through secret channels like wildfire, unsettling the military command and shattering the illusion of invincibility. The Empire, for all its power and pride, was vulnerable, and in that vulnerability lay the first flicker of hope, for those who understood the meaning behind the cry. The distant colonies began preparing, gathering knowledge long hidden and forbidden. Scholars unearthed dusty tomes and ancient data caches that spoke of Baba Yaga not as a mere fairy tale, but as a cosmic force tied to humanity's forgotten past. It was said she was the embodiment of balance and reckoning, a guardian of cycles and justice. The Empire's dismissiveness gave way to paranoia. Intelligence networks reported unrest within human factions, some rallying around the myth, others violently rejecting it. The deeper the Empire dug, the more it realized that this cry was not just a sound, it was a summons, a catalyst awakening something far older and more powerful than their greatest fleets. In the cold void, far beyond the reach of the Empire's brightest sensors, the crying continued. It was a sound both ancient and new, a lament that echoed through the fabric of space-time itself. It was a cry for justice, for retribution, for an end to the arrogance that had led to unchecked conquest and destruction. The Empire, blinded by its own certainty, failed to see that the Baba Yaga was not merely a legend, but a reckoning. And when legends cry, empires fall. As the cosmic wailing grew louder, the whispers of Baba Yaga spread through every corner of human space. Miners in asteroid belts paused their work to listen, traders in forgotten ports shared hushed stories, and children dreamed of a woman in a hut that walked on chicken legs. It was as if the very soul of humanity was stirring from a long slumber. The cries ignited ancient memories buried beneath the Empire's imposed order, memories of a time before conquest, before the stars were ruled by iron and fear. These memories were fragments of resilience, of survival against impossible odds, of a people connected to something greater. Even the most loyal officers felt their resolve weaken. They could no longer dismiss the tears as mere superstition. Something was coming, something that the Empire could neither fight nor contain. The warnings mounted. The Empire's outer worlds grew restless, their defenders distracted by unseen forces. The cracking facade of control threatened to crumble. And somewhere, deep in the unknown reaches, the Baba Yaga watched and waited, her tears heralding the dawn of the Empire's reckoning. Baba Yaga was no mere legend. As scattered scholars and forbidden records revealed, she was a cosmic force tied deeply to humanity's forgotten origins. Long before the Galactic Empire forged its dominion, humanity had existed under the watchful gaze of this ancient entity. She was a guardian, a reckoner, a force of nature bound to the balance of life and destruction. Her crying was more than sorrow, it was a warning signal, a primal alarm resonating through the vastness of space, shaking the very foundations of the Empire's power. It marked the awakening of an ancient covenant broken by humanity's arrogance, by the Empire's ceaseless expansion and disregard for cosmic order. Empire scientists scrambled to understand the phenomenon. They launched probes, pored over data, and attempted to decode the wailing cries using their most advanced technology. Every effort failed. The signals defied explanation, warped space around them, and even disrupted communications. The more they analyzed, the more they realized the crying was alive, intelligent, deliberate. Military commanders ordered fleets to seek the source, to destroy it if necessary. But the deeper their forces ventured, the more they encountered inexplicable resistance. Entire battalions vanished without trace. Ships returned shattered, their crews traumatized and incoherent. Something protected the source, a power that did not rely on conventional weaponry but something far older, far darker. Humanity, long suppressed under the Empire's iron fist, began to stir. Among the human colonies, individuals started manifesting strange abilities. Visions of Baba Yaga's hut on chicken legs, sudden flashes of precognition, moments of overwhelming strength and clarity. These were not coincidences but a reawakening of dormant traits, awakened by the cosmic cry. Secret human factions coalesced around the myth, rallying in defiance of the Empire. They shared knowledge buried for centuries, legends passed down through generations, and awakened powers linked to Baba Yaga's essence. Their resolve hardened. They were not merely victims of imperial oppression but carriers of an ancient legacy. The Empire's response grew frantic. Their scientists delved into forbidden fields, experimenting on human subjects to unlock or suppress these emergent abilities. They developed weapons tuned to the strange energy frequencies of Baba Yaga's cries, but found them ineffective. The Empire's confidence crumbled as their greatest technology failed before an incomprehensible force. Politically, the Empire fractured. Factions argued whether to negotiate with or annihilate this force. Some feared the collapse of their order. Others sought to harness Baba Yaga's power for themselves. Paranoia spread like wildfire in the high councils. Alliances shattered as suspicion poisoned the once unified command. In outer systems, the crying became an omnipresent specter. It haunted the stars and the minds of those who heard it. Entire worlds slipped into chaos as their populations were torn between fear, hope, and madness. The Empire's grip loosened with every passing day. The Empire's vast fleets found themselves outmatched. Battles were lost not by firepower but by a creeping despair that sapped will and resolve. Crews reported ghostly figures appearing during combat, cold winds on airless decks, and voices whispering of reckoning. Fear became a weapon against the once mighty invaders. As the wailing intensified, Baba Yaga's presence grew more tangible. Legends said she was a force of nature, neither wholly benevolent nor malevolent, an agent of cosmic balance. Her cry was the lament of a universe scorned, a call to undo the damage wrought by conquest and greed. The human factions aligned with Baba Yaga were not mere rebels. They were the bearers of a forgotten truth, that humanity was never meant to be subjugated but to live in harmony with the cosmic forces. Their resistance was spiritual as much as physical, fueled by a belief that Baba Yaga's cry was a call to reclaim their destiny. Amid the chaos, secret councils formed in hidden enclaves. Leaders of the human resistance communicated through coded messages, sharing ancient texts and coordinating attack. They moved like shadows, striking at imperial supply lines and sabotaging communications. Their goal was not just survival but to awaken others to the coming reckoning. The Empire's attempts to root out these factions were brutal and desperate. Entire planets were scorched to deny the resistance safe havens. Yet, every attempt seemed to strengthen the resolve of Baba Yaga's followers. With each sacrifice, the myth grew, becoming a beacon in the darkness. Meanwhile, the crying spread beyond human space. Alien species, once allied or subjugated by the Empire, began to feel the disturbance. Some withdrew their support, unwilling to be caught in a cosmic upheaval they barely understood. Others saw an opportunity to rise from the Empire's shadow. Baba Yaga's cry was reshaping the political landscape of the galaxy. The Empire's enemies rallied, sensing the faltering strength of their oppressors. It became clear that the Empire was no longer the unstoppable force it once was. In the heart of the Empire, the ruling elite faced mounting pressure. The warning signs were everywhere: disappearances, insubordination, and growing unrest. Some leaders called for negotiation, others for all-out war. No consensus emerged, only confusion and fear. The message from Baba Yaga became clearer through visions and dreams shared among the resistance. It spoke of judgment, of balance restored, of an end to cycles of tyranny. The cry was both a warning and a promise that the age of the Empire would end, but a new era might begin. Within the military, divisions deepened. Soldiers who once believed unconditionally in the Empire's mission began to question their orders. Some deserted to join the resistance, driven by visions or encounters with forces beyond understanding. The Empire's cohesion fractured under the weight of unseen dread. The technology designed to control the galaxy was impotent against the ancient force represented by Baba Yaga's cry. The Empire's greatest weapons faltered, their fleets reduced by invisible enemies that manipulated reality itself. The power that humanity had forgotten, locked in myth, now rose to challenge the vast machine of conquest. The more the Empire struggled, the stronger the resistance grew. Human factions embraced the myth with a newfound faith, seeing in Baba Yaga a symbol of hope and vengeance. They no longer fought merely to survive but to reclaim their heritage and the galaxy itself. The crying was no longer distant or abstract. It echoed in every corner of the Empire's domains, a relentless reminder that the age of iron and fear was ending. The balance was shifting, and the Empire's fate was sealed. The final warnings came not from commanders or politicians, but from the people, those who had listened to the ancient stories and felt the stirring of something greater. The Empire's leaders could no longer deny the truth. Baba Yaga's crying heralded their end. In those final moments, as the cosmic lament filled the void, the Galactic Empire realized that it was not merely facing an enemy but the reckoning of all they had done. Their hubris had awakened a power far beyond their control, a force that would reshape the stars and the future of humanity forever. The final phase began without ceremony. There were no declarations, no treaties, no dramatic ultimatums. The Empire's collapse started in silence, the kind that followed the long, low cry of something ancient and unstoppable. Across 100 systems, Imperial communication networks failed simultaneously, not from sabotage or overload, but from a deeper disruption, one that corrupted the very framework of their control systems. At first, it seemed like a coincidence, a failed satellite here, a blackout there. But the pattern grew too precise. Entire command chains went dark, leaving fleets leaderless, troops without orders. Artificial intelligences embedded deep within the Empire's infrastructure began rejecting input. Core systems locked out even their creators. Protocols written to ensure total control turned to dead code. The crying had become more than sound, it was now embedded in the very digital and psychic atmosphere of human space. Technicians reported hearing it through unplugged speakers. Officers reported dreams identical in detail, shared across light years. The message was singular. Their time was over. The resistance, now fully transformed into a movement of liberation, no longer needed to hide. They didn't attack strongholds, they walked into them. Entire planetary garrisons laid down their weapons. Fleet captains sent surrender codes before receiving demands. Soldiers confessed to crimes the state had buried. There was no longer fear of punishment, only a compulsion to be honest, to be human again. Baba Yaga's influence was not vengeance, it was truth. It stripped away the illusions that held the Empire together. Myths had become memory. Memory became reality. Humanity remembered who they were before they were broken, and in remembering, they stood again. Some parts of the Empire resisted. The inner ring systems, home to the old families and architects of power, declared martial law. They activated contingency plans designed to protect their class at the expense of all else. They deployed experimental weapons, anti-mimetic drones, temporal distortion fields, gravitic nullifiers. Nothing worked. The Baba Yaga didn't engage them in battle. She didn't need to. Those systems imploded under the weight of their own lies. Leaders turned on each other, driven mad by the amplified echoes of every injustice they had ever sanctioned. The more they tried to suppress the cry, the more it lived inside them. Not a scream of horror, but of regret. Even the most fortified planets began to dissolve, not physically, but socially. Hierarchies collapsed as people refused to participate in the structure of cruelty. Governors were ignored. Orders were dismissed. Factories built to fuel the Empire shut down as workers walked away. There was no uprising, no riot. Only refusal. The Empire had built its strength on fear. When fear disappeared, so did its power. Among the resistance, the role of leadership changed. There were no warlords, no presidents, no singular commanders. Guidance came through collective action, through those attuned to the cry, through the ones who didn't speak the loudest but heard the most. They were not generals, they were interpreters. And what they interpreted was a vision not of revenge, but of restoration. The Baba Yaga was never a destroyer. She was a mirror, held up to the face of civilization. She showed what had been hidden, what had been denied, what had been corrupted. Her tears were not for bloodshed, they were for what had been lost: kindness, memory, connection. When the Empire saw her cry, they didn't just see the end, they saw themselves. The reflection undid them. In the final days, the core of the Empire was a hollow structure. Its capital planet, once a monument to dominance, now sat silent. Skyscrapers darkened. The planetary defense grid, once impregnable, powered down without a command. No enemy approached. No war was fought. People simply walked away. Historians who survived would later struggle to explain the collapse. There were no decisive battles. No galactic invasions. No grand revolutions. The fall was psychological, spiritual, intimate. A collapse from within triggered by a call from beyond. It was as if every lie told to hold the Empire together had expired at once. Baba Yaga never appeared in the way the Empire had feared, no monstrous fleet, no godlike entity raining destruction. She appeared in the minds of children, in the choices of soldiers, in the dreams of those forgotten by the machine. Her strength was not in violence, but in memory, and in the power to remind people of what they once were. The last holdouts of the regime vanished into exile. Some fled to the edge of known space, seeking a place untouched by the cry. But they found no escape. Even in the deepest dark, they heard it. Not a scream, but a whisper, "You remember now." As human space healed, new systems emerged. Not empires, but federations of memory, of mutual respect. No one ruled by fear. Instead, people sought balance. Technology, once used to dominate, was now tempered by restraint. Worlds opened dialogue with species long ignored. Colonies returned to the traditions suppressed under imperial edict. And the stories of Baba Yaga were no longer suppressed myth. They were remembered truth. They were told in schools, written in public squares, carried in the hearts of travelers. Not as fear, but as caution, as a reminder that balance must be kept, that forgetting the cost of cruelty leads to its return. Some still tried to use her name as a weapon. They sought to rebuild power, to shape a new empire in her shadow. But they failed. The cry had changed humanity. They could no longer be ruled by force alone. A deeper rhythm now guided them. And so, the hut with chicken legs was seen again, not as horror but as omen. It would appear briefly above a planet, on the edge of a nebula, in the minds of poets and dreamers. Not to punish, but to witness. Watching, always watching. Not interfering, not judging, only reminding. That memory is stronger than empire. That truth will outlast fear. That humanity, even at its worst, can still hear the cry and choose not to repeat the past. The stars themselves felt quieter, as if breathing for the first time in generations. Peace did not come instantly or easily. Scars remained. Trauma lingered. But the path was no longer downward. The cry had stopped. Not because the reckoning was over, but because humanity had heard it and responded. They remembered who they were. They remembered what they could be. And Baba Yaga, old as the dark between stars, wept no more.